Let's get it on then, shall we? Mwah. Welcome to Sex on the Peach, your weekly hump day dose of everyone's favourite untalked about topic, sex. Let's get honest, let's get open, let's get comfortable, and let's get in to this week's show. Friends, lovers, listeners, happy Wednesday, happy hump day, and happy Sex on the Peach day, and welcome to fucking December. It is almost the end of 2025, and I mean, all I really have to say is, what in the fresh hell was that? What in the shit show is 2025? I actually don't currently know a single person who isn't like, get this fucking year over with. But we are now in December. We're on the home stretch. I'm a week late delivering this episode. Please don't hate me. But as we all know, I'm from Britain, and I do live in a country where it actually doesn't matter what time of year it is. If you say, oh, I'm feeling a little under the weather, people will say, yeah, well, there's something going around. And to be fair, there was something going around. The seasons have dramatically changed. It is now the Baltics, and I could not record this episode last week without coughing every 10 seconds. And I thought, do you know what? For the sake of 7 days, let's just wait and have this be something that's actually mildly pleasant to listen to. So here I am. I hope you've had a brilliant extra week, and I hope your sex drive hasn't grinded to a halt, because let's be honest, it's too fucking cold in the UK to take your fucking clothes off, and none of us wants to pay £126 a minute to have the heating on long enough to put some time into decent foreplay. It's truly giving, just cut a hole in your thermal pajamas or your fleece onesie and have at it. Anyway, I digress, as always. Now, we all know how much I love language and how important I think the language we use towards people and situations is, and how important the language we use around topics to do with sex is, because historically it has been so steeped in shame and stigma. So I think when used correctly and inclusively, language can make a huge difference to people's sexual lives and sexual confidence. So yeah, I fucking love language. And this is a bit of a different side of the topic of languages we'll be looking at today. And that's because it's something I've only really been learning more about recently, because, of course, it's never really talked about, even though it is something that is probably quietly sabotaging a lot of people's sex lives. Of course it is, and of course we aren't talking about it. Haha, what's new? So everyone and their mum at this point knows the 5 love languages. 78% of you confidently answered a resounding yes on my Instagram poll when I asked if you felt you had one. Words of affirmation, acts of service, gift giving, quality time, physical touch. Although apparently there might actually now be a 6th love language floating around, which is being referred to as appreciation or validation. Basically, feeling loved when your partner or people in your love circle as such truly notice you or admire you or tell you you are doing a good job, whether that's emotionally, socially, or even just for surviving Monday. You can get all the gifts, all the cuddles in the world, but if no one ever says, wow, you handled that like a fucking legend, it doesn't land. And sure, maybe we have 6. To be honest, at this point, I'm starting to think social media is its own love language too, because I'm finding the attitude of, if you didn't like or comment on my post, then you obviously don't love me, is becoming a lot more apparent. And I'm not sure what we would call that love language, to be honest. Performative approval? Sorry, not sorry, but my opinion is it is performative, because someone could comment nothing but love on every single thing I ever post. But if they don't show up in real life, does that even mean anything? I mean, it doesn't for me, but I do worry about our social connections when people crave acknowledgement and likes more than lived, felt presence. But listen, I guess for some people that means something, and that's okay. But we've all taken the quiz. We've all claimed a primary love language in the same way we state our zodiac sign and swear it explains our life choices and behavior away. Interestingly, quality time was the most popular one on my Instagram poll. So maybe I'm wrong, and maybe actually there is hope, and maybe that is because we do live in a time when we constantly have a device strapped to our hand. Maybe that actually leaves us desperately in need of that true present connection. But in general, when it comes to love languages, we've probably all had that moment of, oh, that's why he never buys me flowers. Or, okay, that's when I feel really good when they text me sweet things. Now, I don't necessarily agree that any one of us fits into one perfect bracket of those 5 options, both in terms of the way we give and receive love, because as people, we are all more nuanced than that. We're all more complex than a category. But like, I get it. I can definitely look at those categories and think, yeah, I resonate more with some than others. Like, ironically, as much as I do love language and how we use it, words of affirmation is not really my vibe, because personally, I think, or maybe I just have sadly come to learn over the years, this has just been my experience, that words are cheap unless there is action to back it up. So it's not necessarily the primary way I would give or receive love or support, whether that be from a partner, friends, anyone I have a relationship with where there is love involved. And that is based on my history and experiences. So quality time and acts of service is much more my thing. I've pretty much always been looked at as the friend who is the problem solver, or who will go out of their way to physically help someone out, because for me, actually being there shows more commitment, support, and love than just saying I'll be there in a pretty text. And that has, of course, caused complications with people who receive words of affirmation as their primary love language, because it doesn't come naturally to me, even though I'm, like happy to do it for a special occasion. But because I think, but you can physically see how much I care about you because of how much I physically go out of my way for you. So stepping outside our comfort zones with our natural love languages can feel a bit conflicting, and I guess a bit fake if it doesn't come to you genuinely like another would. And I think it's really important to find that balance of making that effort for the people you care most about, but also communicating with each other so that you can all understand the ways you naturally give and receive love. And I genuinely had a friendship end because that friend became seemingly completely unable to see what felt like, for me, constant support from my side. I'm talking propping this person's business up to my own financial detriment to try and help them. But that all felt apparently irrelevant to them because I didn't always remember to say the exact right thing at the exact right time. So it can be really hard and complex because then that also leaves someone feeling resentful for all the effort they have put in to show love and support. Like, gift giving is probably the least important one for me. But for someone who is a gift giver, that doesn't mean I can't receive that. In them doing that, they are showing me that they love and support me. Even though I would more naturally lean towards grabbing a coffee together and having a walk and a chat. But I can see that gift means something to them, and that is their way of showing me that they love or care for or support me. And with physical touch, that is very present in my relationships with partners, romantic partners, sexual partners, and also present when I feel people outside of that really need it. If they are upset and need a hug, but I'm not a go-to hugger or physical toucher outside of romantic partners. This is all getting a bit convoluted, but I think you get what I'm saying. It's not as simple as just saying, I'm this one thing. We all exist within these categories in one way or another, but I don't feel like anyone is or should be aggressively tied to just one. Now, if you've ever considered for a single second that you have a sex language, and as my Insta poll tells me, 68% of you feel like you do, then here's where things can go off the rails a little bit. Because when it comes to sex, people sort of assume that your love language would also be your sex language. For example, if you are a physical touch person, you must want sex all the time. Or if it's words of affirmation, you want a constant slew of dirty texts telling you how hot you are. Or you are the type who would want to be called good girl during a sexual encounter. Or if you're a gifts person, your kink is, I don't know, presents. To be fair, I can do a sex gift. I'll take a sex toy if you're offering. You know what I mean? But no, your love language and sex language are not one and the same. Your love language explains how you give and receive love. It doesn't explain how you get turned on, what opens your body, what shuts you down, or what makes sex feel good, connected, or exciting for you. They are two totally different operating systems. So that can leave people like, I don't understand, I love my partner, we communicate well, we go on dates, we cuddle, we have a great time. So why does sex feel complicated? Why are we not syncing up there? And this could be why. Because you are using the wrong book of linguistics. What most people need is an understanding of your sex language, the way you erotically connect, the style of intimacy that gets you excited, responsive, and ready. And the messy thing is, there isn't one official set of sex languages that we can refer to in the same way we can the love languages. Whether you even agree with the love languages or not, it's pretty fair to say there's a direct point of reference to look at when it comes to that topic. And we don't really have that when it comes to sex languages. There are multiple definitions floating around online, in books, on Reddit, in therapy circles. TikTok probably thinks it invented it. You know how it is. I mean, it thinks it invented girl math when in reality we've actually been out here justifying our dumb decisions and purchases since the dawn of time. And TikTok loves to take therapeutic language and basically get it wrong. So if you have learned about sex languages on TikTok, I don't know, I'd probably be asking for some citations. Cite your sources, skets. But basically, everybody's got their version because there's nothing sort of universally accepted yet. But there are two frameworks that are more commonly used in relationship and sex education spaces. So I'm going to try my very best to merge and explain these two so that you get a full, nuanced, hopefully useful understanding of what sex languages can look like and how to identify yours, and then how to work with your partners without getting lost in all this random internet terminology, because I get lost in it all the fucking time. Because once you know these languages, your sex life could make so much more sense. Because if you and your partner aren't speaking the same sex language, you might not be incompatible after all. You might just be lost in penetranslation. I don't even care. I'm thrilled at myself for coming up with that. Anyway, today we are getting fluent. So, let's get into it. Here is, are you bilingual? In bed. Okay, so most people hear the term sex language and immediately start thinking about kink lists or Cosmo quizzes, but a sex language is not your kink. It's not your favorite position. It's not, I like morning sex, or I like when they kiss my neck. Those are preferences. That's flavor. That's seasoning. A sex language is the style of sexual connection that unlocks your desire for sex and then makes that sex feel good. It's the approach that gets your brain and body on the same team. Because as we've spoken about since this podcast's conception back in 2022, sex isn't just physical. It's mental, emotional, psychological. Listen, sometimes even spiritual if you get the angles right. And what's difficult is a lot of partnered people have completely different sex languages, which is one of the reasons so many people feel confused within their sexual dynamics in their relationships. One person might think, we don't have sex enough. Maybe the other person's thinking, I feel like we have sex enough, but it doesn't feel good to me. So there's a mismatch happening here. And most partners treat this like a compatibility problem or a libido problem. And of course, it might be. But it could actually be a sex language issue because each person is measuring good sex in basically a completely different currency. Think of it like the love languages. One partner might show love by doing the dishes and running errands, while the other person is sitting there thinking, I don't feel loved because you never hug me. Same relationship, same efforts being made, completely different translations. And sex languages work the exact same way. The we don't have sex enough partner might be speaking a sex language that values frequency, initiation, and direct physical access to turn on. Meanwhile, the it doesn't feel good to me partner might be speaking a sex language that prioritizes connection and time to warm up, presence, slower pacing. So to one person, sex isn't happening enough because the initiation cues that they need aren't being met. And to the other person, sex doesn't feel good because the conditions their body needs aren't being met. It's not necessarily that one wants more and the other wants better. You're basically trying to sext each other in two totally different dialects. One of you is out here speaking erotic Italian and the other one's responding in sexy Norwegian. Like, yes, technically you're both talking, but are you actually understanding each other? And when you have two nervous systems responding to two completely different turn-on pathways or arousal pathways, whatever we want to call them, you get a classic relationship deadlock. It's the sexual version of I bought you flowers versus all I wanted was a hug. And this isn't something that you then address with lingerie or by throwing a random toy into the mix or by downloading a new communication app that pings your partner every time you're horny. All of those things are, of course, great and wonderful and all have their place, of course, and they all have their moment. But this conversation isn't about more things. This is about the way you connect. Your sex language is the thing that tells your body, yes, we are safe, we are here, we are open, and we are ready. And until you understand your sex language and the languages of your sexual partners, you're basically just guessing. And guessing might be cute and fine when you are taking a chance on a random movie on Netflix or going for gold at the pub quiz, but not so much in your sex life. And like I've already mentioned, if you Google sex languages, you'll see that the internet is a hot fucking mess about it because it seems to still be very much a concept in progress. And because of this, different educators and therapists interpret it slightly differently, which is why you see different sets floating around. But as I said, there are two more well-established frameworks that come from real sex education work, one of which being the Erotic Blueprints by Jaya and the other being Dr. Doug Weiss's 5 Sex Languages. And I'm trying my best to work with both so that you can hopefully understand what your sex language is within one of these without needing to take a 48 question standardized exam. You know, think of it like a crossover episode where both frameworks sit down for brunch and say, let's just explain this in a way humans can actually use. And the relationship between these two systems is quite interesting because the 5 sex languages are a bit more a map of the terrain, the landscape of arousal, if you will. And the erotic blueprints are the weather patterns, the forces that interact with that landscape. I think I've just made that way more complicated than it was ever meant to be. That was meant to be a simple metaphor, and that is a fucking nightmare. But basically, one tells you how a person opens to sex. The other tells you what stimuli our bodies respond to. And if we use them alongside one another, they can help create a more accurate understanding of how people actually feel open to sex. You might just feel that you only relate to one. You might feel like you don't relate to either. And that's, of course, completely fine, because the whole point of sex languages is to help you understand how you work and then how your partners work and why you might be missing each other, even if in all other areas the relationship feels strong. Now, I asked my Instagram audience what word they felt they probably aligned with in both the sex languages and the erotic blueprints before explaining what they all meant. And if I were to talk about the sex languages and I were to say the words fun, desire, pleasure, patience, and acceptance to you, what one would you feel that you align with most? Because pre-explanation, 58% of the people who responded chose pleasure. And after I had given a short explanation of what each one meant, 73% changed their mind on what they aligned with. So fun, desire, pleasure, patience, and acceptance. Have a think about what you initially lean toward, and let's see if these definitions change your mind. So fun lovers need playfulness and spontaneity woven into their sexual connection. So sex works best when it feels like an adventure rather than a routine chore. And that doesn't mean it has to be some wild Cirque du Soleil performance, but they thrive on simply breaking away from the same script they've been following for years. What they really want is for the sexual experience to feel like all people are extremely present and there is no going through the motions. You might get excited by the unexpected, a heat of the moment quickie before you head out, or turn in the kitchen into a spontaneous foreplay zone. Fun lovers basically struggle when sex becomes predictable or overly serious, or like anyone is checking boxes just to get through it. So if the experience becomes routine or repetitive, they start mentally checking out before anything even starts. Like, your body might still be there, but your erotic energy has completely left the building. Desire lovers are fueled by one thing above all else, and that is the feeling of being deeply, unmistakably wanted. So a whispered, "I can't stop thinking about you," can flip their internal switch faster than anything else. But when a desire lover doesn't feel wanted, if they are the only ones initiating, or if they feel their partner is engaging out of obligation, they feel rejected, and the whole sexual experience itself feels empty or mechanical. Sex without visible, unmistakable desire for them feels like a performance, not a connection. So a desire lover needs that undeniable signal that says, "I want you, I choose you, I crave you." That could be in a text. It could be a string of texts or voice notes describing what you want to do to them, or planning a romantic evening to seduce them the moment they walk through the door. Desire lovers don't just want sex, they want to feel desired. And that is the core of their arousal system, because without it for them, it's like sending a sexy text and getting back, "Okay." Pleasure lovers are the givers, the people who feel most turned on when they know you are turned on. Their desire comes from creating pleasure, not just receiving it. The more their partner enjoys something, the more they enjoy it. They want to know what feels good for you. That is their erotic fuel. And this doesn't mean they don't want pleasure themselves, but their arousal is amplified by witnessing yours. They love reactions, responses, noises, movements. They love the feeling of, "I'm doing something that feels incredible for you." They are the lovers who ask, "Do you like this?" because they genuinely want to tailor the experience to your body. But pleasure lovers are not servants or performers. So when the sexual dynamic becomes one-sided, where they are suddenly expected to perform without connection or without seeing their partner engage, their desire flatlines. when their giving is acknowledged or reciprocated emotionally, they are incredibly passionate and creative lovers. But when the connection feels unresponsive, they shut down because that loop, the feedback loop that energizes them, is broken. Patience lovers are the slow bloomers of the sexual world. And I mean that in the most beautiful of ways. Their desire doesn't just flick on instantly, it grows gradually. Like you're waiting for a warm bath to fill up. And that's not because they are disinterested or hard to turn on. Their arousal cycle genuinely just requires time and space to unfold. Sex isn't a momentary spark. It's a process. And that often begins long before the first touch. It starts with the emotional and relational groundwork of the day, how their partner spoke to them, whether they feel safe and appreciated, and even just the sense that there's no rush or agenda. They might start slow, but when they are fully engaged, they are completely all in. With patience lovers, the journey is the destination. And then acceptance. Acceptance lovers are turned on by feeling deeply, fully seen. Their desire is fueled by the sense that every part of them, whether that's their body, their desires, their quirks, their insecurities, is met with openness, care, and appreciation. They need to feel that they are safe to be completely themselves in order to unlock their full erotic potential. If they feel judged, dismissed, unseen, that entire erotic system can shut down, no matter how perfect the technique or tempting the scenario. And what causes this is unnecessary criticism, shame, or even subtle signals that they are too much or not enough or somehow failing at being desirable. Acceptance lovers need to feel celebrated, not tolerated. I mean, none of us want to feel tolerated, but you know what I mean. To have the full experience of desire. And when that is missing, no amount of technique, foreplay, or bedroom creativity is going to compensate. So after these explanations, the most popular category became desire, and pleasure dropped to 29%. Yeah, I see you all. I see you dropping out when you realized pleasure was about your partner and not about yourself. The minute you realized pleasure was about your partner's enjoyment and not just you starfishing while someone worships you, you all ran. It's giving, I just strongly prefer when everything is about me. It's giving, this quiz is broken, let me retake it. I'm obviously joking, mostly. I know the wording threw some of you off and it's fine, you are safe here. But to any listeners who weren't a part of the Instagram poll, what do you feel you align with now? And is it different than your initial instinct? And similarly, when we looked at the erotic blueprints, which are energetic, sensual, sexual, kinky, and shapeshifter, the most popular category was sensual, coming in hot at 53%. And after explanation, 77% changed their minds. And shapeshifter became the highest ranking category, and sensual dropped to 33%. I actually took a quiz and I also got shapeshifter, which surprised me because even knowing what each one meant, I would have presumed that my answer was going to be energetic. In fact, friends, I was certain I would fit into the energetic category as smoothly as I fit into a For Love and Lemon slip dress. But apparently, I don't even know my own sex language, so that bodes well, doesn't it? Just another reminder that you're all on this learning journey with me. So energetic, I mean, the word wouldn't have lent me in that direction, but once I found out the explanation, I still believe that's definitely me. Energetic, sensual, sexual, kinky, and shapeshifter. Have a think about what you feel you might be, and let's take a deep dive. Energetic lovers are driven by anticipation and tension. That's me. For them, desire isn't just about the moment of touch. The feeling that something is inevitable ignites them more than just the encounter itself. And the challenge for energetic lovers is they can feel overstimulated or disconnected if there's too much immediate intensity without the tension that excites them. That's me. A partner who dives straight into the act as such, without any teasing or playful anticipation, that might leave an energetic lover feeling flat or frustrated. That's me. So speaking their language means learning to let anticipation become part of your foreplay and recognizing that their body responds to suspense as much as it does sensation. So if foreplay is your favorite chapter, it's not the warm-up, it's the main event, and you enjoy experimenting with toys, oils, and anything that heightens sensation, this blueprint likely fits you. It is me. I'm fuming. Sensual lovers are turned on by the full spectrum of sensory experiences. So sight, touch, smell, taste, sound, all of those details count. Walking into a beautiful hotel room, feeling silk sheets on their skin, these things ignite a sensual blueprint's nervous system far more than the mechanics of sex alone. So sensual lovers' desire is deeply tied to how their environment and their nervous system are aligned. A clinical experience can shut them down. So speaking this blueprint means paying attention to the aesthetics of where you are having sex. So if you need the environment to be just right, whether that's the lighting, the soundtrack, the smells, but that's what gets your body ready to go, this might be your blueprint. Sexual lovers are stimulated by what most of us culturally associate with sex. Nudity, genital touch, penetration, very straightforward erotic cues. And their turn on is pretty much immediate, it's direct, and it's unapologetic. If you touch them the right way with clear intention, they can go from 0 to fully aroused in a matter of 0.2 seconds. And the advantage of being a sexual lover is that accessibility to your arousal, because it's easy to activate and it's straightforward to communicate. But it can be a clash with partners who need or crave a slower, more nuanced experience. If a partner moves too slowly or overcomplicates things, a sexual lover can feel frustrated or impatient. Ideally, you meet a sexual lover with confident touch and directness. There isn't guessing, It's just very tuned in presence for immediate body-centered arousal. But the flip side is this can sometimes lock into a very specific idea of sex, and then it feels like a finish line situation rather than a whole experience. Kinky lovers are turned on by the taboo or the intensity of unconventional erotic expression. That doesn't always mean ropes or bondage. It can be about power dynamics, psychological play, or just doing anything society labels as forbidden. The thrill comes from that novelty, from boundary pushing and exploring territory that makes the nervous system a little uncertain. And kinky lovers can be misunderstood as extreme or out there, but really their turn on is about intensity and conscious exploration of what really excites them. And they thrive when partners meet them with curiosity and a willingness to basically experiment. And lastly, shapeshifters. Last but not least. A shapeshifter can fluidly access the arousal triggers of every other blueprint. All hail all of us versatile lovers, apparently, friends, lovers, listeners. Shapeshifters can build anticipation like an energetic lover, or engage directly like a sexual lover, or explore intensity like a kinky lover. So their superpower is basically their adaptability. They can quite intuitively tune into their partner's blueprint and become the lover that the situation calls for. And this flexibility, yes, makes shapeshifters incredibly versatile, but because they can feel multiple streams of desire at once, they sometimes shift to be what others want them to be instead of knowing how to own their own sexuality, needs, and desires. So there we go. Interesting, right? Not necessarily what you would expect. And first of all, do you feel like you align more with one set of languages than the other? I mean, like I said, maybe you don't align with either, and that's, of course, okay too. I don't necessarily feel like the titles of each category have a clear association with their actual explanation in the way that the love languages do. Because when we look at the erotic blueprints, I would have chosen sensual based on word and word alone. But then as soon as I found out the explanations, I would have chosen energetic. Even though everything that is mentioned in energetic to me would be sensual. So I find it a little confusing, even myself personally. And again, with the sex languages, I would have chosen desire just based off a word, but then explanation-wise, I probably lean more towards fun. But listen, I mean, I'm completely wrong across the board, friends, because I'm a fucking shapeshifter, okay? So there we go. I'm basically Mystique from X-Men in the bedroom. So Marvel, when you want to give me a call, I'm right here. Anyway, I don't know if you immediately feel like you do or don't relate to any of these, but I can definitely see my partner in a couple of them. And to be honest, the ones I see us in are different. We probably don't speak exactly the same sex language. And when I asked all of you if you feel like you and your partners have the same sex language, it was pretty much an even split of yes and no. But when I asked if you felt like you would know how to go about navigating a difference in sex languages, 82% of you said, no, you wouldn't know how to go about that. And I get this because you might have one partner who loves spontaneity and wants a quick, playful encounter, and the other partner needs time to warm up emotionally and physically. So if a fun partner initiates abruptly, a patience partner might feel pressured or anxious, and the fun partner will interpret this as rejection, but the patience partner interprets it as insensitivity. And it's not a question of desire because both want connection, but these two nervous systems respond differently. And understanding that can help turn the frustration into curiosity. So how do we create space for both impulses? You know, a desire lover craves being wanted and pursued, but a pleasure lover waits to feel their partner's arousal before they can fully engage. So if both partners stay in their default modes, sex might not happen, or it might feel unsatisfying because the desire lover feels unseen and the pleasure lover feels uncertain. There's a high chance this then might not be a mismatch of libido, but it's a mismatch of cues and expectations. If a sexual lover wants direct touch, nudity, action, and they are paired with an energetic lover who thrives on build-up, tension, and anticipation, if a sexual lover just dives in immediately, the energetic partner is going to feel ignored or rushed. But if the energetic partner draws out the teasing part of a sexual encounter, the sexual lover might feel frustrated, and misreading that can start to cause resentment. Or you might have a sensual lover who needs atmosphere, touch, and immersion, and a kinky lover who likes intensity and taboo. But if one pushes the intensity too fast, the other partner might withdraw. If one insists on a sensory-rich, slow experience, the other one might feel bored or constrained. And that might look like avoidance or disinterest, but really it's about the type of stimulation everyone requires to just feel safe and turned on. And a lot of relationships assume that this mismatched desire or tension in the bedroom is about lack of chemistry, or even worse, about personal failings, because we do take sex so personally. But the truth is, it's about nervous systems and our erotic wiring just not syncing up. A fun lover's spontaneous energy can feel like pressure or even chaos to an acceptance lover who craves emotional safety. A desire lover's need to feel actively pursued and unmistakably wanted can feel intense or even overwhelming to a lover whose focus is on responding rather than initiating. So all of these miscommunications and moments of confusion can spiral into misunderstanding, frustration, or self-doubt. And they are signs that people are speaking different erotic dialects, and that takes attention and care to translate. In a lot of cases, these mismatches aren't a sign of doomed sexual incompatibility, and there is a way to navigate these language differences. But, you know, this isn't a blanket solution. Nothing is. So, of course, there are situations where sexual incompatibility exists, and recognizing that your language is fundamentally different from your partner's in a way that doesn't feel reconcilable, or that there are different issues in place, is all a huge part of being honest with yourself about what you need and deserve. In the same way that I had that friendship crumble because that friend just couldn't see me as a source of support if I wasn't purely showing that through words of affirmation. It happens and it's shit. But again, it's not a personal failing. We are all human and emotions are messy and complicated. So if you do try to look at your sex languages and you do try to make it work and it doesn't, that's also okay. And you shouldn't then assume that your sex language is a problem, because that just simply isn't the case. And with all that being said, navigating these differences isn't ever going to be about one person changing or about finding a magic trick that fixes everything in a minute. It's about learning each other's signals and experimenting with ways to meet in the middle. And that requires curiosity, patience, ongoing communication. And yes, sometimes it's going to feel messy and awkward and a little uncomfortable. But if you want to put in the work, you can create a sexual space where both or all partners feel truly seen. And that's when sex becomes a place of exploration and joy rather than a place of friction. And before we even get into navigating your partner's sex language, how about navigating your own? And you know exactly how I'm going to tell you to do that. Yeah, your own solo time, because you cannot expect a partner to speak your sex language if you don't understand it yourself. It's like handing someone a blank manual and asking them to build a wardrobe. It's not happening. Masturbation is basically your own private research lab for your erotic system. It's where you can actually observe what your body does without pressure, expectation, performance anxiety, or someone lying next to you asking, is this working? You get to notice things like, do you get turned on by slower build-up? Or do you want immediacy? Does your arousal spike with fantasy or sensation or visuals, novelty, or absolutely none of the above? This is where your sex language might become more obvious to you. Fun lovers might find themselves switching things up even when they are alone. Different fantasies, different pacing every time. Someone who aligns with the sensual blueprint might light a candle, get under a soft blanket, basically create a mini spa day because their body turns on through comfort and aesthetic. And none of this is weird. If those are the things that you need for yourself, none of that is weird. It's just information. Solo curiosity helps you understand what turns you on without the fear we all sometimes feel of disappointing another person. This all makes it so much easier for you to bring this knowledge into your relationship in a way that's grounded and confident instead of apologetic or confused. Knowing your sex language through masturbation means you are not expecting your partner to just magically guess what to do with your body like they are trying to solve a Rubik's Cube in the dark. A conversation feels 1,000 times easier once you've done some solo exploring, because instead of saying, I don't know, something just feels off, you can say, here's a thing that helps my body switch on. And then I guess the $1 million question is, how do you learn to speak your partner's sex language? How do you navigate any differences in a way that feels genuine and satisfying without feeling like you are sacrificing or forcing things or giving up pieces of yourself? Because it's not as simple as learning a trick or following a checklist. It's about rewiring how you relate to erotic energy in real time. And that has to be something you are willing and wanting to do. Otherwise, it's like going down on someone while you're thinking about doing your taxes. Sure, it's possible. Sure, we've probably all done it at some point, but good luck actually enjoying it. So, step 1, don't take it personally. I cannot stress this enough. I know it's easier said than done because we are so heavily conditioned to have our ego so codependently attached to anything sex related. So I'm not saying this like, okay, but just do it, because we've got a lot of undoing of bullshit to be able to reset our egotistical attachment to the sexual space and realize actual sexual collaboration isn't an ego-friendly zone. But your partner expressing desire differently than you is not a judgment on your attractiveness, your skill, or your worth as a lover, because you also express it differently to them. It goes both ways. If you need a little something different, or a little more, or a little less of something that you are currently getting from your sexual relationship, you don't immediately write your partner off as a terrible lover. You might really like spicy food. Your partner likes mild food. If they wince at you enjoying a ghost pepper chili, that doesn't mean they hate you. It means they have different tolerances, and you can cook the same meal for the both of you. Same base, same foundation, and then you add the spice at the right point so that you can both enjoy the meal how you like it. That's not offensive, is it? Well, it's the same with sex. Different sex languages mean different wiring. It's not a personal affront. And so that applies to conversations about it. If you start to feel offended because your partner needs something that you don't, or expresses desire differently, pause and breathe for a hot second. It's not personal, it's biology. But again, we are weirdly wired to take any discussion about it personally. Your partner says, hey, I really like it when we try XYZ. And instead, you're immediately thinking, wait, are you saying I'm bad at sex and everything we've done before is awful? No. Think of it like the love languages. If someone says, I feel loved when you do little things for me in this way, you don't get offended. You don't pout and say, so I'm failing you as a partner, and have a tantrum. And if you do, well, then you have bigger problems, my friend. Because genuinely, if you have no desire to actually listen to your partner and the small things that help make them feel good, sexually or otherwise, and you're just waiting for an excuse to be offended or to start a conflict or to make yourself a victim because your partner has asked for a morning hug, then you should probably rethink your position in a relationship altogether, because that isn't a healthy or respectful way to treat a partner. You have to actually want to learn your partners. And then it's all just information. It's not an insult. If your partner says, I'm really turned on when we do X before Y, that's data. It's not a criticism. It's not a personal attack. It's just really useful intel. And if you take it personally, you're halfway to a resentment hangover before anyone even touches a sheet. And I think people think this all sounds like, oh my God, it's so much work. But actually, isn't it so much easier to just put some time into learning what your partner actually wants and needs? Isn't that effort so much easier than years of partners feeling isolated and anxious within their own relationships? to actually be on the same page as your partner or partners. I think that sounds like a lot less work, to be honest. But if you are someone who is completely unwilling to waver or adjust, then I'm going to assume your love and sex language is straight MT boy between the height of 5'10", 5'11". I'm joking. I love you all. I'm obsessed with you all. But yeah, I'm going to suggest that if you have that love and sex language, that can just be named selfish and we can swiftly move on from there. But for those who are actually interested in their partner's happiness, the first mental shift is curiosity has to replace judgment. And this kind of curiosity and observation feels like it's giving MI5 spy energy, but it's about paying attention to your partner's patterns of arousal and response. What triggers them? When do they visibly enjoy themselves? What makes them withdraw or tense up? You might notice that your partner's arousal skyrockets with some teasing. That's me. But flatlines if you jump straight to penetration. Yeah, that's me. Still me. See, there's no way I'm a shapeshifter, friends. I'm just not that versatile, as much as it pains me to say so. But maybe your partner responds dramatically to verbal affirmation, but seems distracted or less interested when you just try to make it physical immediately. The goal here is to notice what lights them up and what dims them, in the same way you'd note which love language cues actually make them feel cared for. You might think, they are rushing me, but curiosity could reframe that as, okay, they clearly want some urgency. Is there a way that I can meet that halfway in a way that makes both of us feel comfortable and satisfied? Curiosity is reframing the mismatches as information and data rather than rejection. And yes, it might feel awkward. It might feel clunky. You might laugh. That's okay. That's normal. Sex is really messy. Relationships can be messy. Being a human is really fucking messy. So trying to force perfect synchrony on the first night is like expecting to run a marathon without training. It's just not going to happen. We've got to put the groundwork in. And with these observations, you can then feel more comfortable and informed beginning this channel of communication with your partner or partners. And this doesn't require a PowerPoint presentation or a dramatic, we need to talk. We're not revealing government secrets here. You're literally just sharing information about what helps your body feel good. And sharing that information can be relatively simple in reality, but the key is to approach the conversation without blame or criticism. So instead of, I need you to do this or else I can't get turned on, you can try, hey, I realized I respond really well when there's a bit of teasing first or a bit of verbal affirmation first. Can we play with that next time? Or I've noticed I get turned on faster when the environment feels cozy. Can we light some candles next time? Or I figured out I really like when you initiate, even just something small, so I can feel that spark. Or for my patience lovers, I have realized I need a bit more warm up to get into my body. And that's not because I'm not into you. That's just because it's how my nervous system works. You know, these sorts of statements share your experience without blaming. And they also invite your partner's input and they open the space for mutual experimentation. And that communication will be ongoing. It's not a one-time talk. Forget the idea that you can just sit down and figure everything out, because that's just not going to be the case. We are always evolving as people, and you might even find that your own sex language changes over time. And there will also be communication that is nonverbal. You can continue to give each other signals, whether that's through moans or touches or eye contact, even the way your breathing reacts to things. And I know a lot of my listeners are from the musical theatre industry. Hi, I love you. But at this point, I need you to experiment like a scientist and not like a performer. So tiny tweaks, small experiments. You're not stepping into some whole new other role. But observation and communication are actually basically useless if you aren't going to follow them with some experimentation. And just try one thing at a time. Check in afterwards and then discuss and adapt. Maybe it means slowing your pace a little. Maybe it's initiating a little differently. Maybe it's adding some verbal cues. Maybe it's creating a small ritual just for the two of you, or however many of you there are involved in your relationship, whether it's a playful touch or something like that, but just so it feels like it's your own private little arousal game that speaks your partner's language. Sometimes it will work beautifully. Sometimes it will not. And that's perfectly fine and normal. But over time, you will start to develop an intuitive understanding of each other's rhythms. And try to manage your expectations a little bit, because mismatched desire and sex languages will pretty much always create some friction, even if all partners are committed. But that is just the translation process happening in real time. And ideally, you want to give each other that space to respond differently. The aim isn't instant alignment, it's gradual understanding and the desire to get there. And very importantly, this shouldn't feel like you are sacrificing yourself. Meeting your partner's needs doesn't mean ignoring your own. You're not a sex contortionist. You're not giving up pieces of yourself to make this work. Meeting your partner halfway doesn't mean abandoning your own arousal or comfort or boundaries. If something doesn't feel right for you, it's not a failure. It just requires you to negotiate collaboratively, to re-look at your boundaries or rediscuss how you can navigate this within your comfort zones and make sure no one feels coerced or pressured. You know, I'm not saying if my partner's sex language was kinky and they are turned on by the taboo, that I should feel like I'll then be willing to let them put their penis in my ass when I know it literally causes me insane pain and to black out. I wouldn't just all of a sudden be willing to do that, but I'd be willing to discuss power plays that we could look at, because even if it's something I might not necessarily jump to myself, because it might not be what brings me the most arousal, it's something I would be comfortable to experiment with. You know, I have my own comfort levels and boundaries within that. But this is where most mismatches can go off the rails. If a partner does give too much or feel too compromised, they then start to feel resentful, and suddenly it's a new cycle of miscommunication and frustration. Healthy negotiation of sex languages keeps both partners engaged without sacrificing themselves. And just, you know, remember, translating these sex languages, it's an ongoing project. Sometimes it's messy, sometimes it's awkward, but if you start to understand each other's more, sex becomes less about guessing what your partner wants and more about understanding how their erotic system works, how your own responds, and how to make those systems interact in real time. And when it comes to bridging the sex languages, there are a few classic mistakes that trip people up. Thinking that desire should be telepathic. Our partners cannot just know what turns us on. Let's be real, we barely know ourselves half the time. Desire doesn't magically transmit across the bedroom. You have to actually say something, or guide them, or show them through touch or words. It's sex, it's not a seance. If you are waiting for psychic cues, all of you are going to be disappointed. Doing the thing you like harder or more. And that's a classic panic move. Fun lovers might think more fun will fix things, or sexual blueprint people might think more penetration will fix things, or energetic lovers might think I'll just pull back harder, I'll pull back more, and think that will fix things. But none of that bridges the gap. It just creates more stress and more miscommunication. Bridging these differences isn't about escalating your own pleasure in isolation. It's about adjusting and responding to your partner's signals. Expecting your partner to change instantly. Bodies do not come with an instant on-off switch. If someone has spent decades needing a slow warm-up or a specific kind of emotional or sexual context, they aren't suddenly going to become a human light switch because you want things faster. Those things take time. Desire, arousal, they all have their own rhythm, and that rhythm isn't something you can negotiate in real time. Okay, so patience and consistent effort are your friends here. Ironically, very sexy friends. Refusing to name what's actually happening. We have this weird tendency to avoid talking about the obvious stuff in sex, even when it's the exact thing causing friction. People will have full-blown arguments. People won't speak to each other for days instead of just saying, my body shuts down when I feel rushed, or I need to feel wanted first. Naming those dynamics, naming what is literally happening calmly and without blame, that fixes more than any technique or position ever could. It might not feel sexy in the moment, sure, but I promise you it saves all people from a lot of unnecessary frustration, confusion, and resentment. Just name it. Just say it. And trying to meet in the middle without understanding the mechanics. Compromise sounds great on paper, but if none of you understands why your partner reacts the way they do, again, what you're really doing is just guessing. And again, guessing rarely improves sex. Educated compromise, where you understand arousal cues or where you even understand triggers, that is what actually changes and improves sex lives. Once you know the mechanics, meeting in the middle becomes a conscious, informed choice rather than just some frustrated gamble. Let's imagine a couple in which one person is a pleasure lover with a sexual blueprint, which isn't all that hard for me to imagine because this is absolutely my very own partner. This is a partner who gets immediately turned on and ready to go by seeing their impact on you. Your reactions are their fuel. So if you are quiet or slow to warm up, they are not immediately thinking, oh, that's okay. That's just their arousal pattern. They're thinking, oh God, I'm failing, abort mission, forget it. And their arousal doesn't fade like that because they're being shallow. It fades because their erotic wiring literally depends on your feedback. So their partner, let's say they are a patience lover with a sensual blueprint. So their whole erotic system is slow burn, atmospheric, and body-based. They need time. They need build-up. They need the room to not feel like a dental clinic. And they are not going to transform into a porn soundtrack 3 minutes into foreplay because someone wants them to. And that's not because they are withholding or because they don't want sex. It's because their nervous system warms up gradually. So here's where it tends to fall apart. The pleasure sexual partner is thinking, they are not reacting, something's wrong, I'm not doing enough, I'm doing the wrong thing, should I call a fucking ambulance? And the patient's sensual partner is thinking, please stop looking at me like I'm a microwave meal that's taking too long. Yeah, that's a mismatch, but it is fixable. The patient's sensual partner, the slower warmer, could say something like, hey, I really like what you are doing, but my body needs a bit of time to catch up. So if I'm quiet, please don't read it as disinterest. There's no apologizing for being too slow because that's not a thing. There's no promising to be faster, louder, or more dramatic. It's just an accurate translation of their arousal pattern. And the pleasure sexual partner, instead of waiting for Broadway level theatrics immediately, might be able to shift from I need big reactions right now to can I tune in to the smaller signals? The breath changing, the hips tilting, the tiny noises that sensual people might not even realize they are making. And then once the patient's sensual partner is actually warmed up, that's when the bigger reactions that the pleasure sexual partner needs naturally show up. The feedback is real and timing actually matches physiology instead of fantasy. So what's really happening here? The pleasure sexual partner lowers the pressure for an immediate performance, and the patient's sensual partner increases transparency so their silence isn't misread as rejection. They can meet in the middle without either of them betraying their wiring, their needs, or their erotic identity. No one becomes someone else. No one sacrifices. They just finally start speaking the same language. And that's the whole point of sex languages. It's not about demanding change. It's about understanding the translation. Friends, lovers, listeners, thank you for tuning in to today's deep dive into sex languages and erotic blueprints. All those ways our bodies, minds, and desires speak a language that's not always obvious to our partners or even to ourselves. Here is the cold hard truth. There's no universal blueprint for sex. Hopefully you now know that mismatched desire, pacing, or fantasy isn't about you being broken, your partner being broken, or the universe conspiring against your sex life. It's just wiring. And unlike your IKEA flat pack, human wiring comes with zero instructions, zero troubleshooting, and zero refunds. And the fun part is navigating this isn't about grand gestures or romantic genius. It's about noticing each other, communicating, and brace yourself, actually listening. No magic pill, no one night hack. And if you are waiting for your partner to suddenly just get it, spoiler alert, that's not happening. And some of this will probably feel like a psychology exam while you're supposed to be having sex. And that's normal. It's also normal to discover that your partner's idea of being turned on looks nothing like yours. And sometimes you'll realize that your idea of turned on looks nothing like yours from 5 minutes ago. Welcome to adult sexuality. Woo! Another scam of adulthood. Because let's be honest, sex education barely covered condoms and fallopian tubes, never mind nervous systems. No one ever pulled down a projector screen and said, by the way, your arousal, your desire, your ability to connect, your capacity to stay present during sex, all of that is basically your nervous system doing choreography in the background. We grew up thinking sex was about technique or confidence or some mythical level of being in the mood. But your nervous system is the thing actually running the show. If your body is in fight, flight, freeze, it doesn't matter how attractive your partner is or how many erotic tricks you know, your system is busy trying to keep you alive, not get you off. And this is where sex languages make so much more sense, because each sex language isn't just a personality quirk, it's a nervous system pattern. Some people need intensity to feel fully switched on. Some people need slowness so their body can catch up. Some people need a little bit of chaos or humor because it jolts them out of their head. Some people need emotional safety before their body will even consider arousal. We are all wired differently, and that wiring can often show up sexually more than anything else, because sex is where your nervous system either relaxes into pleasure or yanks the emergency brake. And again, none of this is your fault. You weren't taught it. You didn't miss the class. The class simply didn't exist. But once you understand that your arousal style is just a nervous system responding the way it was designed to respond, it gets so much easier to stop blaming yourself and to stop blaming your partner. You're not too much. You're not too slow. You're not too sensitive or too kinky or too hard to read. You are just a person with a nervous system that has preferences, and those preferences are allowed to exist. And honestly, once you realize that, navigating sex languages becomes a whole lot less personal and a whole lot more doable. So if you leave with one takeaway today, stop pretending your partner should read your mind. They probably can't even read a menu correctly, let alone your erotic desires. Stop blaming yourself for things not working. Start actually looking, actually asking, and actually paying attention. Pay attention to your body, pay attention to your partner or partner's bodies, and talk about what turns you on. And then your sex life might just stop feeling like a complicated physics experiment. Your sex life could go from mysterious chaos to mildly comprehensible chaos. An upgrade, really. I will be back so soon with the penultimate episode of the longest season ever of Sex on the Peach. But for now, thanks for coming. Thank you for tuning in to Sex on the Peach today, and I hope that you enjoyed this week's episode. You can find and follow me on Instagram, YouTube and TikTok at Sex on the Peach Cast, and you can also get in touch with me at sexonthepeachcast@gmail.com. Please do continue to like, share, subscribe, rate and review wherever you listen to your podcasts, and I'll see you next week. Love.